The keys to the taxi were still warm in my coat pocket. Its engine was probably still ticking cool in the driveway, the driver patiently waiting to take me to the airport, to my new life. I was supposed to be gone. But in my haste, in the tearful, chaotic rush of saying goodbye to the home I had shared with my husband for 50 years, I had forgotten the most important thing: his will. It was sitting in the top drawer of his old desk. So I had told the driver to wait, and I crept back inside my own front door, expecting to grab the manila envelope and be gone in 30 seconds. But I stopped in the hallway, my hand frozen on the doorknob. The house was supposed to be empty. My son, Mark, and his wife, Brenda, had just hugged me goodbye, tears in their own eyes. But I heard their voices. They were floating from the kitchen, low and urgent, laced with a conspiratorial tone that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. "She's finally gone," Brenda said, her voice stripped of the syrupy sweetness she'd used with me just moments before. It was sharp, metallic. "The taxi is waiting. She'll be on that plane for 6 hours. That's more than enough time." "Time for what?" my son, my Mark, asked. His voice was weak, hesitant. "Bren, are you sure about this? She thinks we're just packing up her things for the movers." "Honey?" A sharp, impatient sigh from Brenda. "Mark, don't be naive. It's this, or we declare bankruptcy next month. Her little nest egg from the house sale and her life insurance payout is the only thing that can save us. I've already spoken to the lawyer. We'll get power of attorney, citing her grief-stricken and confused state. By the time she's settled in Arizona and realizes what's happening, the house will be sold, the accounts will be credited, and the money will..." The world tilted on its axis. The wallpaper in my hallway seemed to ripple and sway. My legs felt weak, and I had to grip the doorframe to keep from collapsing. My son, my only child, the boy I had raised to be a good and decent man, was plotting to have me declared mentally unfit, to steal my home, my husband's legacy, and everything I had left in the world. And it was all based on a lie. They were sending me away not out of love, but to get rid of me. Hi everyone, I'm Grandma Clara. I'm 70 years old. And 5 minutes ago, I believed I was the luckiest mother in the world, blessed with a loving son and a daughter-in-law who was like an angel sent to help me through my grief. Now, I know the truth. I am a fool who almost walked away from her entire life, leaving it in the hands of the two people she trusted most in the world, who were, at this very moment, sharpening the knife to plunge into my back. This isn't just a story about a will or a house. It's a story about a betrayal so profound, it has shaken the very foundations of my soul. But they've made one critical mistake. They think I'm already on my way to the airport. They don't know I'm standing right here. They don't know I heard everything. So please, stay with me. This is the story of how I walked back into my house to get a piece of paper and ended up fighting for my life. Your support, your likes and subscriptions to Grandmother's soliloquy give an old woman the strength to face the battle ahead. To understand the sheer, cold-blooded audacity of the plan I had just overheard, you have to understand the picture of familial love and support they had so masterfully painted for me over the past 6 months. You have to understand the depth of the trust they so meticulously built, just so they could shatter it. My story, the one I was living in just an hour ago, didn't begin with this betrayal. It began on the worst day of my life, the day I lost my Robert. My husband, Robert, was my anchor for 50 wonderful years. He was a quiet man, a structural engineer who saw the world in terms of solid foundations and reliable supports. That's what he was for me. He wasn't a man of grand romantic gestures, but his love was in every solid thing he built for us. The sturdy oak bookshelf in the living room, the perfectly balanced stone wall around my garden, the unwavering certainty in his eyes when he looked at me. He had a quiet strength that made me feel safe, even in the fiercest storms. His death, from a sudden heart attack 6 months ago, didn't just break my heart. It sheared my foundation. I was adrift, lost in a sea of grief, and the big house we had filled with a lifetime of laughter suddenly felt cavernous and silent. My son, Mark, was my lifeline. Or so I thought. In the initial weeks, after his father's death, he was wonderful. He stayed with me, held my hand through the funeral arrangements, and listened for hours as I told old stories about his dad. He seemed just as lost as I was, his own grief, a raw, open wound. He was always a good son, a little quiet, a little too eager to please perhaps, but his heart was kind. He worked a stressful job in sales, and I knew things had been tight for him and Brenda lately, but he never complained. He just showed up, a sad smile on his face, ready to help his old mom. And Brenda, oh, Brenda played her part to perfection. She swooped in like a guardian angel. She filled my empty house with the smell of baked bread and fresh flowers. She sorted through Robert's clothes with me, crying alongside me as we folded the sweaters that still smelled of his aftershave. She was the one who first planted the seed of the Arizona move, and she did it with such apparent love and concern that I never once questioned her motives. It started about a month after the funeral. She sat with me at the kitchen table, her warm hand covering mine. "Clara," she began, her voice soft with empathy. "I'm worried about you here all alone. This house is so big, so full of memories. It must be a constant, painful reminder." She was right, of course. It was. "Mark and I were talking," she continued, "and we just want you to be happy and safe. We found this beautiful community online in Sun City, Arizona. The pictures are just lovely. Little houses with little gardens, a community pool, social clubs, a new start. A place where you can have sunshine and friendship without the burden of this huge empty house." She presented it not as an exile, but as an escape. A golden ticket to a new sun-drenched chapter of my life. Over the next few months, she and Mark became a whirlwind of loving efficiency. They brought me brochures and showed me videos of my potential new home. They talked about how they would handle everything. "You just focus on feeling better, Mom," Mark would say. "Brenda and I will take care of the rest. We'll hire the movers, we'll sort through everything, we'll handle the sale of the house. You won't have to lift a finger." I was so blinded by my grief and so overwhelmed by their apparent devotion that I agreed to everything. It felt like a blessing. My loving children were taking care of me, smoothing my path forward. I trusted them implicitly. When Brenda would gently ask about the details of Robert's life insurance or the estimated value of the house, I saw it not as greed, but as responsible planning. When she took charge of finding a real estate agent and a lawyer to handle the sale, I saw it as her taking a burden off my shoulders. She would pack boxes with me, her laughter filling the rooms. "Oh, Clara, do you remember when Mark did this?" she'd say, holding up an old photo. She made herself the keeper of our family's memories, all while planning to sell them to the highest bidder. "They bought me the plane ticket, a one-way flight to a new beginning. They drove me to the airport this morning, my heart a painful mix of sorrow for leaving my home and immense gratitude for their love." Brenda hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "We'll miss you so much, Clara," she whispered in my ear. "But this is for the best. Call us the second you land." And I believed her. I believed every single poisonous word. I walked away, my heart swelling with love for the angel who had married my son and was now so lovingly, so thoughtfully kicking me out of my own life. It was only the forgotten will, that simple piece of paper, that brought me back from the brink and allowed me to see the truth. The angel was a vulture, and she and my son were just waiting for me to fly away so they could pick my life clean to the bone. For a full minute, I did not move. I was a statue carved from ice and shock, rooted to the floor of my own hallway. The voices from the kitchen had faded, replaced by the frantic drumming in my ears. Betrayal is a strange poison. It doesn't just hurt you. It hollows you out, leaving a cold, echoing cavern where your trust used to be. Every kind word Brenda had spoken, every comforting hug from my son, replayed in my mind, now twisted and monstrous. The baked bread didn't smell like comfort anymore. It smelled like bait. The flowers on the table weren't a sign of love. They were funeral wreaths for the mother they were trying to bury alive. My first instinct was to burst into the kitchen, to scream, to wave my arms and let loose a torrent of rage and heartbreak. How could you? After everything? But then, Brenda's words echoed in my head, cold and clear. We'll get power of attorney, citing her, grief-stricken and confused state. And just like that, the hot, screaming rage inside me died, replaced by a glacial calm. They had already prepared my cage. If I stormed in there, hysterical with grief and anger, I wouldn't be a wronged mother. I would be exactly what they needed me to be. Confused, emotional, unstable. I would be handing them the key to lock me away and throw away the key. My husband, Robert, a man of logic and foundations, never made a move without a plan. In that moment, I felt his spirit settle over me. I would not be the weeping victim. I would be the engineer of their downfall. My legs, still trembling, began to move. I forced myself to take silent, measured steps towards the back of the house, away from the kitchen. I slipped into Robert's study, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My eyes fell on his desk, and the manila envelope with his will inside. I snatched it, my fingers closing around the crisp paper. This was the excuse for my return. This was the first piece of my new reality. Then I did something that felt both cowardly and incredibly brave. I turned around, crept back down the hallway as silently as I had come, and walked out my front door. The taxi driver, a kind-faced man who was scrolling on his phone, looked up in surprise. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked. I forced a watery, grief-stricken smile onto my face. The first performance of my new life. "Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry. I just forgot something my late husband wanted me to have." I held up the envelope as proof. "I'm ready now." As the taxi pulled away from the curb, I did not look back at the house. I couldn't. My home was no longer a sanctuary. It was the enemy's headquarters. My mind was racing, a whirlwind of strategy and pain. The 6-hour flight to Arizona was their timeline. That was the window they believed they had to steal my life, which meant I couldn't get on that plane. "Driver," I said, my voice clear and steady now, all traces of the fragile old woman gone. "Change of plans. Please take me to the St. Regis Hotel downtown." The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyebrows raised, but he simply nodded. "You got it, lady." The St. Regis was a place Robert and I had gone for our anniversary once, a world of quiet, anonymous luxury. It would be my war room. I checked in using my own credit card, not the joint one I shared with Mark, the one they were planning to drain. In the sterile quiet of my hotel room, with a view of the city I had called home my entire life, I spread out my arsenal on the bed. My husband's will, my bank statements, my purse. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My first call was to the bank. I spoke to a manager, my voice calm and firm. I reported my debit card stolen and put an immediate freeze on all my accounts, citing potential fraudulent activity. "No one," I stated, "is to have access to these accounts or any information about them without my being physically present with 2 forms of photo ID. No one. Especially not my son Mark." There was a pause on the other end of the line, but they complied. The first gate was closed. My second call was harder. It was to my sister's daughter, my niece, Sarah. Sarah was a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense litigator in Chicago. We weren't exceptionally close, but I knew she was fiercely loyal and, more importantly, that she had never been particularly fond of Brenda. I laid out the story for her, my voice breaking for real this time as I recounted the words I had overheard. She listened without interruption, and when I was done, there was a moment of pure cold silence on the line. "That two-faced conniving," she began, her voice a low growl, before catching herself. "Aunt Clara, listen to me. You did exactly the right thing by not confronting them and by leaving the house. Do not go back. Do not talk to them. Do not answer their calls." "They'll worry," I whispered, the old motherly instinct dying a hard death. "Let them," Sarah snapped, her voice all business now. "Let them think you're on that plane. Their worry is part of their trap. I'm booking the first flight out to you. I'll be there by this evening. In the meantime, You are going to be a ghost. We need to get ahead of their power of attorney play. They've already spoken to a lawyer, which means they're serious. We have to be more serious. Nidamari said it away. Hanging up the phone, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. I felt the full weight of my 70 years, the crushing sorrow of my husband's absence, the sickening heartbreak of my son's betrayal. I curled up on the bed, the unfamiliar hotel sheets cool against my skin, and I cried. I cried for the man I had lost, and for the son I had lost in a different, more terrible way. I allowed myself 1 hour. 1 hour to be the grief-stricken widow they thought I was. When the hour was up, I sat up, washed my face, and ordered a pot of strong black coffee. The time for grieving was over. The time for war had begun. My son and his wife thought I was a confused old woman, flying off to be put out to pasture. They had no idea I was just a few miles away, in a luxury hotel, assembling my army. They thought they had 6 hours. They had no idea their time had already run out. My niece Sarah arrived that evening like a force of nature. She swept into my hotel room, her lawyer's briefcase in one hand and a bag of takeout in the other, her eyes blazing with a righteous fury that warmed my own cold heart. She didn't coddle me. She didn't treat me like a fragile old woman. She treated me like a client, a partner in the battle to come. "Okay, Aunt Clara," she said, spreading documents out on the hotel desk. "Here's the situation. They have a head start. Their lawyer is probably already drafting the petition for conservatorship. We need to cut them off at the knees, legally, before they can even get a foot in the courtroom door." The next morning, we launched our counteroffensive. Our first stop was the real estate agent Brenda had hired to sell my house. We walked into her chic, modern office, and the agent, a polished woman named Mrs. Davenport, looked up with a practiced, sympathetic smile. "Clara, dear," she began, "I'm so glad you came in. Brenda was just telling me you were feeling a bit overwhelmed." Sarah cut her off, her voice as sharp and cold as glass. "Mrs. Davenport, my name is Sarah Clark. I am Mrs. Miller's legal counsel. As of this moment, you are to cease any and all activity related to the sale of her property. Any listing agreements signed by Brenda or Mark Miller are null and void, as they have no legal standing. Is that understood?" "Nadi." Mrs. Davenport's jaw dropped. She stammered, looking from Sarah's stony face to mine. I simply gave her a calm, steady look. The look of a woman in complete control. She nodded, speechless. The first pillar of their plan had crumbled. Our second stop was my husband's lawyer, a kind, elderly man named Mr. Gable, the very man Brenda had claimed to have spoken with. As we sat in his dusty, book-lined office, I recounted what I had overheard. Mr. Gable listened, his expression growing more and more thunderous. "That is an outrageous falsehood," he boomed when I finished, his fist hitting his desk. "Brenda Miller called me once to inquire about the timeline for the estate's settlement. I told her it was a private matter. She has never spoken to me about power of attorney or your mental state. The audacity!" Sarah leaned forward. "Mr. Gable, we need to formalize this. We need a sworn affidavit from you, stating that you have no reason to believe Mrs. Miller is anything but sound of mind, and that you have not been party to any discussions regarding a conservatorship." "You'll have it within the hour," he vowed, his old eyes flashing with protective loyalty to his late friend. The second pillar of their plan was dust. All day, I didn't answer my phone, which rang incessantly with calls from Mark and Brenda. I watched the screen, my heart twisting with a strange mix of pain and cold resolve every time my son's name flashed. They were getting nervous. Their timeline was slipping away. That evening, back in the hotel, Sarah looked at me. "We've built the fortress walls, Aunt Clara. Now it's time to set the trap. It's time for you to go home." The idea terrified me. "I can't face them, Sarah." "You won't be alone," she said, her hand on my arm. "I'll be there. And we're not going in to fight. We're going in to give them the performance of a lifetime. They think you're a confused old lady. It's time to give them exactly what they want." The next morning, I called my son. My voice was a perfect imitation of a weary, disoriented traveler. "Mark, honey?" I said, my voice trembling. I missed my flight." "What? Mom? What happened? Where are you?" His voice was a jumble of panic and, I suspected, frustration. "Oh, I got so confused at the airport. All the people, the noise. I couldn't do it. I took a taxi. I'm home." There was a stunned silence on the line, followed by a whispered, urgent conversation in the background. "She's back," I heard him hiss to Brenda. "I'll be right there, Mom," he said, his voice strained. "Don't move. We're coming." When they burst through the front door 20 minutes later, they found me sitting on my sofa, my suitcase on the floor beside me, looking lost and helpless. Sarah was in the kitchen, out of sight. "Mom, what on earth happened?" Mark asked, rushing to my side. Brenda followed, her face a mask of carefully constructed concern, but I could see the frantic calculations churning in her eyes. Her plan was falling apart. "I couldn't leave Robert," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes, real tears this time, drawn from a deep well of genuine sorrow. "This house, it's all I have left of him. I can't sell it. I can't go." This was the moment of truth. Brenda's eyes narrowed. I saw her pivot, her mind racing to formulate a new plan. If I wouldn't leave, then they had to control me here. "Oh, you poor dear," she cooed, kneeling beside me. "Of course you can't. We were wrong to push you. You're not well. The grief, it's clouding your judgment. Don't you worry about a thing. Mark and I will take care of everything. We'll take care of you. We can handle the finances, the house. You just need to rest." She was walking right into it. "Perhaps you're right," I said, looking from her face to my son's. "I am so confused. Maybe you should handle things for a while." A look of pure, triumphant greed flashed across Brenda's face. She thought she had won. And that's when Sarah chose to make her entrance. She walked calmly into the living room, holding a file folder. "That's a very generous offer, Brenda," she said, her voice cool and clear. Mark and Brenda spun around, their faces a comical picture of shock and horror. "Sarah?" Mark stammered. What are you doing here?" "I'm here as your mother's legal counsel," Sarah said, walking over to stand beside me. "And I find your sudden concern for her financial affairs fascinating. Especially since just yesterday, you were planning to have her declared incompetent to steal those very assets." Brenda's face went white. "That's a lie. We would never." "Would you?" Sarah asked, her voice dangerously soft. She opened the folder. "Then perhaps you can explain this." She pulled out a document and held it up. "This is a sworn affidavit from your mother's real estate agent, Mrs. Davenport, detailing your attempts to sell this house without your mother's full, informed consent. And this," she pulled out another paper, "is an affidavit from your late father's lawyer, Mr. Gable, attesting to your mother's sound mind and stating that you lied about consulting with him." She let the papers drop onto the coffee table. They landed with a soft, damning thud. Brenda stared at the documents, speechless, her mask finally, irrevocably shattered. But it was my son I was watching. I watched Mark's face crumble as the truth, in all its ugly, undeniable detail, crashed down upon him. He looked at his wife, then at me, then back at his wife, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening understanding. He saw the lies. He saw the manipulation. He saw the woman he loved for what she truly was. "Mark," Brenda whispered, her voice trembling, reaching a hand out to him. He flinched away from her touch as if he'd been burned. You told me she was confused," he said, his voice a broken whisper. "You told me we were helping her." "I was," she shrieked, her composure cracking completely. "We need that money. Are we supposed to just go bankrupt while she sits on a gold mine?" And there it was. The confession, the raw, ugly truth, spoken aloud in my living room. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, the frail, confused old woman they thought I was, and watched their world burn to the ground. The trap hadn't just been sprung. It had been a controlled demolition, and the foundation of their life together had just been vaporized. My living room, which had been a stage for their lies just moments before, became a silent courtroom. Brenda's shriek still hung in the air, an ugly stain on the quiet dignity of my home. The confession, raw and greedy, had sucked all the air out of the room. Mark stared at his wife, his face a mask of utter devastation. He looked like a man who had just discovered the person sleeping beside him every night was a complete stranger. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. His voice, when it finally came, was hollow, deadened by the impact of the truth. "Get out, Brenda," he said, not looking at her, but at the floor, as if he couldn't bear the sight of her. "Mark, baby, listen to me," she started, taking a step towards him. "I said, get out," he roared, the sound ripping from his soul, full of a pain so profound it made my own heart ache for him, despite everything. "Get your things, and get out of my life." Brenda looked from his shattered face to my calm one, and she saw there was no appeal to be made. She had been so thoroughly, so completely outplayed. With a look of pure, venomous hatred directed at me, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed like a gunshot, signaling the end of their marriage. And then I was alone with my son. He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands, and his body was racked with silent, shuddering sobs. Sarah, my wonderful, fierce niece, gave me a small, sad smile and quietly let herself out, leaving us to navigate the wreckage. I didn't rush to comfort him. I let him sit with his shame, with the crushing weight of what he had almost done. After a long time, he looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. "I don't know what to say, Mom," he whispered. "There are no words. Sorry isn't big enough." "No," I said softly. "It isn't. But it's a start." "Leonan?" In the weeks that followed, we began the slow, painful process of rebuilding. The divorce was messy, but with Sarah's help, we ensured Brenda couldn't touch a single thing that belonged to our family. The house sale was, of course, canceled. Mark moved back in with me for a while, into his old childhood bedroom. We didn't talk much at first. We just existed in the quiet space of our broken home, two survivors of a storm of our own making. He eventually found a new job, a less stressful one, and a small apartment of his own across town. He came over for dinner every Sunday, and slowly, tentatively, we started to talk. We talked about his father. We talked about his own financial pressures, the desperation that had made him vulnerable to Brenda's poison. And we talked about trust. I told him that trust, once broken, is like a shattered vase. You can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always be there. Our new relationship would have to be built around those cracks, with honesty and care. One Sunday, he came over with a large, awkwardly wrapped package. He set it on the floor. "I know it's not the same, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I wanted to try." I unwrapped it. It was a beautiful, sturdy armchair, almost identical in style to the one his father had loved. He had found a local craftsman to build it from old photographs. It wasn't Robert's chair. It could never be. But it was a gesture. It was a piece of new foundation. It was him saying, "I see you. I remember. I am trying." I cried then, for the first time since that day. Not tears of grief, but tears of a fragile, hesitant hope. What did I learn from standing on the edge of that abyss? I learned that the most dangerous lies are not the ones people tell you, but the ones you tell yourself. I told myself that my son's love was unconditional, that my daughter-in-law's kindness was genuine, because the alternative was too painful to contemplate. I ignored the whispers of my own intuition, because I was afraid of being alone. My grief made me vulnerable, and their greed was a predator that smelled my weakness. I also learned a hard lesson about love. Love is not about blind trust. It is not about ignoring red flags to keep the peace. True love, the kind my Robert gave me, is built on respect. And what my son and his wife were doing was the furthest thing from respect. They saw me not as a person, but as a problem to be managed, an obstacle to be removed. My son forgot that. He forgot that loving someone means protecting their dignity, not just their physical safety. He has learned that lesson now, in the hardest way possible. And my advice to you, to anyone listening, is this. Listen to what people do, not just what they say. Brenda's words were honey, but her actions were poison. She filled my house with flowers while she was arranging to sell it from under me. Pay attention to those contradictions. They are where the truth lives. And please, never, ever let anyone make you feel like a burden in your own life. Your home, your memories, your decisions, they are yours. You are the sovereign of your own world, no matter your age. Sometimes, you have to remind the people who are supposed to love you of that fact. You have to be willing to stand your ground, to be the engineer of your own life, even when your hands are shaking. Your peace is worth the battle. It is worth everything. Thank you for walking through this fire with me. Sharing this story has been like cleaning out a deep wound. It hurts, but it's necessary for the healing to begin. If my story has meant something to you, please show your support with a like, a subscription to Grandmother's Soliloquy, and by sharing it with anyone who might need to hear that it's never too late to fight for yourself. Always remember, even when your foundation is shaken, you have the power to rebuild it, stronger than before. Be well and be wise. I'll see you in the next story. Love, Grandma Clara.